the whole time you're like, just show me Dirk's dick, right? Like the whole time. That's all that you want for the beginning.
Oh, yeah,
Which
absolutely.
Yeah. Right. You do. Everybody does. You're like, well, show it. If it's that fucking big, just show it.
Fuck
Everybody
stop
wants
teasing
to see
me.
it.
Yeah.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Karate Schlafly.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Happy New Year.
Each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, you can subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review several different TV series, including Westworld, Taboo, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. And coming January 2021, Season 3 of American Gods. Find all that information or past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and end each week with a Shappy Hour cocktail party. Also on Twitch, we're doing the Expanse watch party. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch along with us live every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
So today, Gene, we will be reviewing a film which has a kick-ass New Year's Eve party in it. So it seemed appropriate for this time of year. And way back in April, Charlie from Ventura commissioned the 1997 American period drama film focused around a California teen dishwasher who becomes a porn star, Boogie Nights.
When Charlie wrote in and he said, "Hey, Shat host, so this is a moment of truth. After being a loyal listener of your podcast for 4 years, I have finally decided to commission a movie. And it only took a worldwide pandemic and being quarantined for a month to inspire me to support the show financially. Even though some of your rankings are atrocious, I don't know in what world that Friday the 13th is ranked as a better film than Halloween, or get that Shawshank Redemption isn't in the top 15, and don't get me started on Ghostbusters. But then just when I think you couldn't possibly get any dumber, you go ahead and give Dumb and Dumber a perfect score and totally redeem yourself. One of my favorites, Wes Anderson, has yet to have his only eligible film, Rushmore, get the Shat treatment. And I'd be really interested to see what your take on him would be, as this is early Wes. But like Scorsese and Tarantino, he has a very distinct and unique style. Speaking of Tarantino, how the hell has nobody commissioned Reservoir Dogs yet? So just when I thought I was going to flip a coin between Goodfellas and Reservoir Dogs, I thought about my other favorite director that came out of the 90s and whose last name also happened to be Anderson. Once I realized I was onto something, I quickly flipped to the rankings, hit Command F, and typed in the first 4 letters of the title. And to my excitement, a big fat 0 popped up. Being the diligent person that I am, I checked to make sure it wasn't on the upcoming schedule. And once again, to my surprise, it wasn't there. The film has arguably one of the best ensemble casts of all time, an amazing soundtrack, and a premise that is absolutely perfect for the pod. I, of course, am talking about Paul Thomas Anderson's breakout film, Boogie Nights. I love this film, and I've typed way too much already at this point, so I'll just say the main reason I'm choosing this is because I think it will make for some great Shat-attainment for not just myself, but for everyone in Shat Nation that loves and appreciates this film. Looking forward to the pod. Your ride or die, Charlie from Ventura.
Guys, Charlie, aside from being a 4-year listener, is a fucking pro. I work in digital marketing, and I can't tell you how many times, like, you'll put a Facebook ad out there and it'll say, click here to see the catalog. And the person will comment, how do I see the catalog? And you're like, right where it says fucking click here. Charlie, he's got it all figured out. He's like, okay, I know the movie I want to do. I'm going to go onto your list of movies. I'm going to perform a search, see that you haven't done it before. Then I'm going to go look at the schedule that Big D puts together and know you're not doing it. Then I'm going to see if it fits into the calendar in the right spot. Then I'm going to commission it. Charlie, I bow down to you, sir.
He's a true pro.
Well, Boogie Nights is a 1997 period drama written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. It's set in Los Angeles' San Fernando Valley and focuses on a young nightclub dishwasher who becomes a popular star of porno, chronicling his rise in the golden age of porn from the 1970s through his fall during the excesses of the 1980s. The film is an expansion of Anderson's mockumentary short film, The Dirk Diggler Story, and stars Mark Wahlberg, Julianne Moore, Burt Reynolds, Don Cheadle, John C. Reilly, William H. Macy, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Heather Graham. Boogie Nights was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including Best Original Screenplay for Anderson, Best Supporting Actress for Moore, and Best Supporting Actor for Burt Reynolds. Big D, Ash, we always ask the question, what are your memories of Boogie Nights? We'll start with you, Ash. What do you remember, and where were you when you first saw Boogie Nights?
I saw this for the first time when I was in high school. I don't remember exactly when, but I was getting into film, and I don't mean like movies. Like, I mean like, you know, what Martin Scorsese would call cinema, right? Like, I started getting into a lot of what people were saying were some of the best movies of the time. And I became obsessed with Paul Thomas Anderson after seeing this film. I love Charlie for commissioning this, because I commissioned before I was on the show with you guys, I commissioned another Paul Thomas Anderson film, Magnolia, which came out a few years after this. That happens to be my favorite of his, but I think this one is a pretty close second. I remember loving this movie from my very first viewing, and I have to say, I've been really, really looking forward to going back and seeing if this one held up.
How about you, Big D?
Yeah, I have no idea. I really should. I think probably at 2 hours and 30 minutes it turned me off, but I have no recollection. But I'll tell you, after I did watch it, it has become one of my favorites. And Ashley, thank you again for reminding me about Magnolia. That's another movie I never would have given a chance to. I would never have watched Magnolia if it wasn't for you. And it turned out to be one of the highlights of the films that we've reviewed.
I feel like such a dirtbag right now because Ash got into this because she was getting into film. I did not see this when I was a teenager. Like, one of my friends when I was in my 20s gave me access to like this movie server that he was hosting online. And so I was like, oh, Boogie Nights. I'm pretty sure there's like nudity in that. I wanted some jerk off material. And so I knew Heather Graham was in it. So I was just going to fast forward to the Heather Graham titties part. And so, I mean, I did. But then I wound up like stopping, rewinding, and watching it properly because as I was fast forwarding for more Heather Graham titties, I saw John C. Reilly dancing. And I was like, whoa, John C. Reilly's in this? So I backed it up. I started from the beginning and I watched the whole thing. 3 hours later, I was a fan of Boogie Nights. So, you know, sometimes your dick gets you into good situations.
And Gene, that's what Jack Horner's wanted to do with his films. He wanted you to come in, not just drop a load and leave. He wanted you to come and stay for the story.
Right. Drop a load and then stay. Stick around.
Yeah. You gotta see what happens. Yeah.
Well, on that note, Big D, let's roll the trailer.
Everyone's given one special thing, right? Everyone's blessed with one special thing. I want you to know I plan on being a star. A big, bright, shining star.
Eddie Adams from Torrance.
Yep.
Jack Horner, filmmaker. I make exotic pictures.
In 1977, a kid from nowhere.
Maybe think about your name.
My name, yeah.
Something a little pizzazz.
Dirk Diggler. Good name.
I like your name a lot.
Had a dream of getting somewhere.
Jack Horner has found something special in newcomer Dirk Diggler.
So let me just pop in this 8-track, and you just give a listen and tell me what you think, okay?
It was a time when disco was king.
These are the ones. These are great.
Yeah, those are really cool. Are they lizard?
No, they're Italian.
Do you like my shoes?
They're pretty cool.
Sex was safe.
Woohoo!
Pleasure was a business.
Cut. Terrific. Nice work.
And business was booming.
And the award for Best Newcomer goes to Mr. Dirk Diggler.
Wow.
Goodbye, 1979. Hello, 1980. Are you ready?
But in 1980,
Come on, you puppies!
the party was over.
You are fired! What? You're fired!
It's jealousy, it's deceitfulness, it's vindictiveness. But, I mean, God, what can you expect when you're on top?
Oh, wait. Not this part.
New Line Cinema presents
See at a nightclub where he meets porn filmmaker Jack Horner. Jack auditions Eddie by watching him have sex with Rollergirl, a porn starlet who always wears skates. After arguing with his mother about his girlfriend and his sex life, Adams moves in with Horner at his San Fernando Valley home. Adams gives himself the screen name Dirk Diggler and becomes a star because of his good looks, youthful charisma, and unusually large penis. So, guys, this movie opens up with a super fun club scene, and I'm already like into it. The music was kind of like eerie at the beginning, and I was like, oh, it's going to open up with something dark. And then, bam, it's like disco. We're having a party. And all I could notice is that this camera never stops moving. There's so much precision to the way everything is shot. And Ash, this is a testament to PTA's incredible direction, whether it's at the club, at the pool party, during a heist. That camera is rarely sitting still, and the movement is just clockwork sharp. Every shot is perfect. And guys, this is hard to do, and it gives the film a lot of artistic leeway because it feels like we're watching a stage production. Like, I'm not a big fan of Hamilton, but there's a lot going on stage at the same time. And here, the entire ensemble of Boogie Nights is in motion. It's creating energy that they can control in any direction, whether they want it to be fun or frightening or sexy or exciting. I just love it.
Yeah, Gene, they also have that opening one continuous shot, the long shot into the club like Goodfellas, where they're going down through the kitchen and up to the ballroom. It's amazing. And I don't want to sound cheesy here because we're a podcast that has Shat in the name, but I felt like this is a film. This is not a movie. There was artistry behind it. You can feel it. When the camera is moving through the scene, it's letting us see each of the characters. And whether we're in the club, the pool, it locks onto one, and we follow that character for a couple minutes. They interact. They almost pass us off, so we're going around. At the pool scene, there's even a part where one of them goes underwater. You come out. We're immersed into this environment. Immediately, you become part of the movie.
Well, and I think what it allows you to do too is that, and Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, is so brilliant at this, is that he has these incredibly complex characters that somehow within like 3 minutes, because of the way that he shoots them. And so even the way he creates the camera angle the first time we see Dirk in the kitchen, where it goes from like his feet up to his face, like even just in the way that he's shot, putting him in the position of not being as powerful as Jack is, like everything he does is so incredibly intentional, and it's just fun. Like you can't help but get like hyped up when you watch one of his movies because you feel like you're in for something, you're in for some sort of experience. And even though I knew it was going to happen in this film, like I felt that again. It had been long enough since I saw it that I was like really stoked for the movie to get started once, this opening scene was over.
And I don't want to be like Gene, just spooging all over the couch watching Boogie Nights on his friend's server. But this movie is the first one that I can remember that uses music a correct way. I bitch and complain all the time, whether it's Forrest Gump. I'm like, why? The music, it's just, I understand you're trying to pull our nostalgia string, or you're trying to explain a part of the plot, but it overwhelms most movies. This, it's into the background. It's part of the ambiance. It's bleeding into the scene. It's a lot like someone has left the radio on the scene at the party and you just walk in.
I think that's really, really smart. And I think the other thing too is that I think, we forget that Mark Wahlberg wasn't this massive celebrity that he is now in the 90s. I mean, he was Marky Mark still, right? And he almost didn't do it. I mean, this made his career, but Wahlberg almost didn't do it because it had not been that long since Showgirls. And so he was really terrified when he heard the premise that this was going to be like another Showgirls that was just going to be this absolute bomb and destroy his career the way that Elizabeth Berkley's career was very unfairly destroyed by Showgirls, which is a brilliant film. But luckily he read the script and he did it. And I have to say, first of all, he's gorgeous in this movie. I forgot how fucking gorgeous young Mark Wahlberg was. And secondly, I love that he did it because this is not a caricature of the porn industry. It's very clear from the outset that this is meant to be an incredibly honest portrayal, not just of what the porn industry is, but more importantly, how and why people get involved in it.
And it's even more impressive when you think about the fact that it's a period piece from the 70s. Because if you're doing like a period piece from the 20s, it's easy to be stoic. If you're doing a period piece from like the 19th century, it's easy to do dramatic scenes because you're dressed the part. The 70s just looked goofy. Like people's hair was goofy, their clothes were goofy, and it's very hard to play a serious role when the character himself has to dress goofy. And also, because he's Dirk Diggler, he's got to have like a laughable charm and sort of a naivete about him. I think a lesser actor would have gone too funny or too serious. It's very hard to walk that line, and he was perfect.
What surprised me the most about his performance is you would expect Marky Mark to be able to pull off the second half, the douchebag, the arrogant, the drug addict egotist. That's the one you would expect. But he embodies that beginning, that young Eddie. There is an authenticity to the performance. He looks like a naive 17-year-old kid who's dreaming of becoming a star. When he cries, when his mother's being mean to him, calling him stupid, and he says, "Mom, please don't be mean to me." I forgot it was Mark Wahlberg. He was, at that moment, he was Eddie. He was just this kid. And I wonder how much of that he pulled from his actual life of growing up in Boston and trying to break out. And I think that was the inspiration for a performance that was, I think, truly amazing.
I remember this movie being good, and I remembered Heather Graham's tits, but I remember this movie being good. I didn't remember the details, though. I remembered Dirk being like a squeaky clean, nice young kid who's like corrupted by the world of porn. But he's no angel. Like, that's not what happens at all here. Dirk is ambitious. He knows he wants to be a star. He's not shy about his huge dick. He says it's like a gift, right? I mean, if you want to watch him jerk off, it'll cost you. You want him to fuck? That's no problem. He'll do it. Like, that mirror karate thing he does, the self-affirmations, like, it makes us smile, but it also does a really great job of showing us, like, Eddie's kind of a weird guy. Like, he's kind of a pervert. He's kind of just a strange person, but he was born to do this one thing. He was born to do porn. And what's funny is Eddie, as a character, he talks like porn characters talk. He really is that guy. Like, he speaks exactly the way his character should. He has no problem remembering the lines. He's an absolute pro.
Oh, he's completely a pro. And I love the way that they introduce us all to Dirk, or Eddie at this point, and the legendary penis. But we don't see it at this point. The only way we get to judge whether or not this is truly God's gift is the reaction on each of the members of the crew. So during the first scene, the camera slowly focuses on the crew, and it goes one by one. And as he opens his pants, the camera zooms in to each one slow-mo. And it's like a kid on Christmas morning who sees, oh, it's a Nintendo 64. And the eyes are getting huge. It was the thing of dreams for these people. And it ends, I think, on Jack, kind of like, yep, I found my star.
Yeah, I love that even the older guys, like the grips and the cameraman, are just like these grizzled old dudes who are just like, they treat porn like it's a day at the factory. They're just like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Well, and that scene is so fantastic, too, because they could have done this scene in a totally different way where, like, they actually showed the sex scene, right? Like, they actually showed them fucking. And what I love about this movie is, to be a movie about porn, there's not a lot of sex that's actually happening on screen. And it's so brilliant. I'd forgotten the fact that you go, like, into the camera and it's flipped upside down. So, like, you can see the scene, but you can't really see the scene. It keeps us far enough away from it that keeps us, like, wanting more. And we're wanting to, the whole time, you're like, just show me Dirk's dick. Right, like the whole time. That's all that you want for the beginning.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, you do. Everybody does. You're like, well, show it. If it's that fucking big, just show it.
Fuck
Everybody
yeah, stop
wants
teasing
to see
me.
it.
Yeah.
Like, but I do think though that what I loved about this is it got me thinking about what it must actually be like to be in porn, like especially for a guy, because having to have sex on cue for women, I think is much easier than having to have sex on cue for a dude. And it's not just that, it's also like how they have him stop and like hold off on coming, and then he comes and then he has to immediately do it again. I mean, that's a pretty difficult ask. Like, I feel like I could probably be a porn star easily because you can just, you can fake it. Women are used to faking things. But for men, it's got to be really difficult. So a special guy that comes along, whether he's got a big dick or not, I could understand why Jack's so excited about Eddie, because he's this young kid that can fuck like crazy all the time. And that's got to be, a huge moneymaker in porn with the big penis or not.
And I love the way they're treating Eddie on set too. Like, it's like they're giving him direction, but it's also very encouraging. Like, aim it at her tits, Eddie. And it's funny, when I was 18, Big D, I don't know if it was like this with you, but before I had sex and when I was a teenager, all I was worried about was what you read in the magazines that everybody talked about. It was in songs. Is like, you don't want to finish too quickly, right? You don't want to prematurely ejaculate. That was the only thing you were worried about. Now I'm like 40. And the question is always like, will I have the energy and lack of stress to actually initiate sex today? Like, it is literally the buildup of sex. Morning sex, totally easy to do. But as the day builds up, when you're a 40-year-old, it's like, you got work, you got podcast stuff, you got your Twitch stream, you got all this shit's piling up in your head, your to-do list. And you're like, fuck, I don't know. And so I guess just pros and cons of getting older, right? Like, now you can go as long as you want, but when do you want to go?
I know what you're saying. And I think I've talked about this before. There was a time at Mardi Gras where I had sex in front of a large group of people, and performance was not an issue. And it was just the mood, it was getting into it. But I think on camera, it would be completely different because you have people there who are waiting on you. And I had a little bit of experience with this. When Vanessa and I were going through fertility treatment the last time, and they needed a sperm, they were going to count my sperm. So the first time I went and did it, it was like in this little room in the back of the IVF facility in the bathroom, and they gave you some magazines and whatever, you jerked off. The time before we're going to do the procedure, he's like, oh, we got to go try this new facility. So I walk in, and it is like a pediatric, like a doctor. So I walk in, there's like 40 kids and parents in the waiting room. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm in the wrong place. And the nurse is like, no, this is the right place. She goes, just go into that room right there. I'm 3 feet away in like a room designed to jerk off with parents, with kids. They're screaming. And I'm like, how the fuck am I going to do this? And they give you material, and you got to do your business into the cup. So I came, and I come out and I go, what's the deal with it being here? She said, we do it on purpose. It's to see if you can perform on the day. Because the day of the in vitro, when they're going to fertilize, they've got the eggs. A lot of guys can't perform. So she said, we can't do an extraction of eggs, and then you can't perform that day. She said, if you can perform in front of all these kids, the noise and everything, we know you'll be good on that day.
Did you get offered a contract right there on the spot too?
No, it was not.
We got our
pleasant.
next young talent.
It was not pleasant. So I don't envy guys who do this for pay, because it became a job.
Well, with friend and fellow porn star Reed Rothchild, Dirk pitches a series of successful action-themed porn films. Their carefree lifestyles in the late 1970s disco era change at a New Year's Eve party when assistant director Little Bill Thompson discovers his wife having sex with another man. Bill, tired of being repeatedly cuckolded by his wife, shoots them both dead and kills himself. Dirk also does cocaine for his first time at the party, foreshadowing his eventual downward spiral.
I remembered how good this movie was, but I forgot how funny this movie is. And I laughed more in the first third of Boogie Nights than I did throughout the entirety of Trading Places last week. I mean, it's a much funnier film. And I think the action porn is solid gold. I mean, those scenes, the trailer, the fact that it's done with such like earnestness by both, Mark Wahlberg and John C. Reilly. He's incredible in it. And it just made me think about all the porn that I've seen, in the low bar that a lot of the porn today has, like what Jack's talking about, that people just want to go, get off. And so at Tulane, we always, every year in the spring semester, the school put on what was called the All-Nighter, and it was a safe sex fundraiser. And all the money that was raised went to the AIDS Research Foundation, and they gave away condoms and they gave away all this. And so the school sponsored it, and the school sponsored, renting this massive porn, and everybody watched the porn in McAllister Auditorium together. And so my senior year, we watched a porn called Sex Club that was a spoof of Fight Club. And it was the most amazing movie. It was an hour and a half long. And I remember sitting adjacent to one of my professors, the most difficult professor I had, he was there. And then one of my advanced calc professors was down the way. All the professors came, all the students came, and we all watched this porn together. And it was there. Nobody was jerking off, but everybody was there, to watch the movie and to watch the plot, because the sex was totally secondary. And as a woman who doesn't particularly care for porn, I appreciate the narrative, and I would have totally gone to see in the theater and paid money a Brock Landers film because it looks absolutely incredible.
Yeah, when I first started watching people's parents' porn that we would find in a drawer somewhere, and we pop it in the VHS tape, all the guys would gather around and watch it. There were it's a ranch and they've got to raise enough money to save a horse, or there's some sort of a ski trip and then they get snowed in and they have to start banging. These old porn movies, I thought that was just the norm. That it was just, it was a movie. It was 60 or 70 minutes and there was a story to be told. And I remember as a kid, I would just pop them in and watch the whole movie. I didn't just watch a scene from it. And then one day I was at a friend's house and his dad had a tape that was called Max Hardcore. This is basically my moment where I am Jack and I'm dropping into the shitty porn, the gonzo porn, that, really cheaply produced. It was definitely shot with a handheld VHS. And Max Hardcore is fucking disgusting. He's an old dude. He's got nasty teeth. He wears a cowboy hat and he's kind of got a big belly, like a weird belly, like a Chuck Liddell body, Anyway, I was watching it and I was like, I don't think I like porn anymore. And I didn't go back to it until I think the internet.
Yeah. I think the only drawback to vintage porn is the resolution. It's hard to watch because it's so dark and grainy. I would like to see the Brock Landers films, like Angels Live in This Town. I'd like to see that in HD. Or a Debbie Does Dallas. So one of those vintage porns, to see them in 4K. Do it like Transformers. Do a remastering, and I think it would be a different experience.
Yeah, but then you got to see, the porn stars always have those weird bruises on the back of their legs, and I don't know what that's all about, but I don't like that. Or dirty feet. I don't want to see that in HD. And that's the thing is the narratives today, it's all step siblings and people forced to fuck for money and women being brutalized. I'm Dirk, Jack, and Reed. I want nice stories. I want people to have a good time together. And I think I've recently lost my appetite for new porn. I've literally started going back on Pornhub and I'll just search for vintage porn because those movies were fun. And I finally watched just a couple weeks ago, I watched Debbie Does Dallas. And I'm this is fascinating. There's this weird premise where everybody's trying to make money because Debbie's got to go to Dallas to be a cheerleader, but she doesn't want to go by herself. So all of her friends get together and they make a company, and everybody's banging. They just look like normal people and they're just having normal sex. There's no double vaginal, double anal. It's just normal.
Well, in preparation for this, because I believe in doing real in-depth research, I went to Pornhub and I have not been to Pornhub in I don't know how long. And I just looking at it, and I was going, like that. And Tom was like, what? I was like, it's so angry. When did porn get so angry? And he's like, oh, well, he's like, I like this one and I like this one. I was like, no, I was like, this is so mean. And I am just I don't know. I guess I'm super boring because I feel like the only channel that I went to that didn't look terrifying was the sensual massage channel and things like that. Because I was like, okay, this is nice. The music's nice. Because everything else, it was surprise anal, surprise painful anal. It's why do we need two channels where there's surprise anal?
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to at least think that all participants in the film are enjoying themselves. Nobody enjoys ATM. No woman said, yeah, let's do this. So that stuff turns me off.
What's ATM?
Oh, ass to mouth. Ass to mouth.
Oh.
But then there's also ass to ATOM. Ass to other mouth. Yes. Yeah. So that.
You.
So they
in the ass and you put your dick in another person's mouth. That's also there.
Yes.
Is that just what they're there for? Is to receive the dick?
I don't know. It seems like it's everybody sharing.
I think everybody on set's there to receive the dick. But, the thing is that the newest phenomenon, though, is OnlyFans, right? So this is people making their own channels. And like, that's the thing now. It's all about your brand building. You produce yourself. You market yourself. Like, there's no production anymore. It's just you handheld, using your smartphone or whatever. And like, I tried out OnlyFans for a little bit because I was just curious. I was like, oh, well, it's cool. Like, it's probably like very independent. They're probably interesting people. And from what I found is like, I don't really want to get to know any of the people in my videos because they're all like pretty boring. One of them was like, I'm going to get naked in my new truck. And it's the same things that she did on her couch, but it's in her truck. And I was just like, I don't care. Take me back to the 70s.
It's like Farrah from Teen Mom. I was so excited. One of my embarrassing loves is Teen Mom. I'm obsessed with Teen Mom. And when Farrah from Teen Mom became a porn star, I didn't think I could be more excited about something. And so I went and watched all of her videos, and I'm just watching like, this is so fucking boring. And like, she has like lingerie ones. She's like, look at my lingerie. Isn't it sexy? My lingerie's sexy, isn't it? Like, and that's it, like over and over again. And then she takes her top off and it's like, aren't my tits sexy? Like, it's so lame. So I've never been to OnlyFans, but I would go to the Bella Thorne one.
Well, at this point in the movie, we're kind of like, I don't know, about 30, 40 minutes in, we start to get like the first hints that things are going kind of dark with that OD scene. And it's heartbreaking, and thankfully they bring us right out of it. It was like an adrenaline shot to the heart in Pulp Fiction where Philip Seymour Hoffman shows up. And this guy, he's a fucking legend as Scotty. Like, I knew he was in the movie, but I was so into the movie at this point that I had forgotten he was going to make an appearance. He comes around the corner and I've got this huge smile on my face. I start squealing. He is so awkward, squeezed into those little outfits. It's like his little belly hanging out. And he's so fucking thirsty for Dirk. He's like, there's one scene where he's walking Dirk to set and he's holding the clipboard and he's like sucking on the pen that's attached to the clipboard. He just wants that hog.
Oh, he does. Totally. And there are a couple pathetic characters in this movie, and we see them in this New Year's scene. And I can't decide who I want to feel more sorry for. Like you said, we have little Bill, who's been watching his wife have sex with multiple different men, and she belittles him. Get the fuck out. Get out of here. So I don't know how he holds up. Then you have Scotty, who is just drooling over Dirk everywhere. And then you have Buck, who everyone's making fun of his search for an identity and his costumes, and he's trying to get a life out of porn. Let's take our knowledge of what happens, right, out of the equation. Which one of them is a more sympathetic character that you really feel sorry for at this party?
I mean, I think they all are. I mean, I think every character in this film I feel sorry for.
Yeah, I feel the most sorry for Scotty because I like Scotty. I mean, I don't dislike Buck, but I don't feel sorry for Buck. I think Buck is just kind of trying new shit out. I think Buck's pretty cool. But Little Bill, as far as like who has it the worst, fucking for sure. I mean, he's just humiliated. I don't know why he didn't just fucking pack it up and leave.
Yeah, he's got that terrible mullet too, which doesn't help things. But I mean, William H. Macy, I mean, this is our second movie in a month that we're doing with William H. Macy, and he chews up the few scenes that he's in. I mean, especially the one where they're there and she's fucking that guy on the driveway and the guy's trying to talk to him about lighting. He's like, hello. Like, my wife's fucking another guy right here. Like, he plays the comedy and the drama so well. And we talked about how funny this movie is, and it is. Up until this point, it's very, very funny. But this movie would not work if it didn't turn dark, because whether you like porn or not, you got to be honest that the porn industry, it's pretty fucking dark. It's pretty dark to be a part of. And all of a sudden is so abrupt in the way that Bill just breaks, and he walks to his car so calmly and he gets the gun and he just brutally murders them and walks out in that sad smile and then shoots himself. I forgot how shaken up you are as a viewer when this happens, even if you know it's coming. It's so just brutal and sudden, and it makes you ready for this massive turn narratively that Anderson's going to take. And I randomly will talk to myself out loud when I watch movies, and I just went, fucking brilliant. Like, it was such a smart scene.
But I like that it wasn't all at once, in the sense that there were still points of levity to give us a breath. You know, it's kind of like when we were watching Game of Thrones, The Dark Knight. You had to have Arya's library scenes because you couldn't have it all at once. But John C. Reilly being in this, he's kind of like the counterweight to William H. Macy, where he's just funny throughout. And like, you can rely on him to give us a giggle. He looks great in this, by the way. He looks very slim. I mean, I don't think John C. Reilly is ever going to be described as handsome, but he's very like slim, animated. It's the best I think we've seen him look on screen. He's not looking like Steve Brule, right? That Boogie Shoes montage with Dirk and Reed like dancing and shopping, it's really one of the best montages I've ever seen in any movie. And I started wondering, I'm like, shit, their weird, like dumb challenges and their love for each other and the way they're so supportive of each other when they started off kind of adversarial. I was like, was Step Brothers based on Boogie Nights? Because it feels like the same character.
It does, but I have to say, like, I don't know. I think John C. Reilly, he's not handsome, but he looks like a porn star. Like in this, he looks like a guy that would be cast in a porn, right? Because the guys are never super sexy. Like they just have good dicks. And I mean, if he had a big dick, I would totally buy that John C. Reilly was a porn star.
Have you seen the dude from Leo Lulu?
No.
The French guy? Oh, no. Man, Ash. I'll send you.
I have to Google it. Yeah, send me a link.
You can't, like, you only see the bottom half of his face, I think, in any shot, but goddamn, like his body and his jawline and ugh.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dirk finds it increasingly difficult to achieve an erection, falls into violent mood swings, and becomes upset with Johnny Doe, a new leading man Jack has recruited. After arguing with Jack, Dirk is fired and takes off with Reed to start a music career. Jack rejects business overtures from Floyd Gandoli, who insists on cutting costs by shooting on videotape. After his friend and financier, Colonel James, is imprisoned for possession of child porn, Jack works with Gandoli, becoming disillusioned with the projects he expects him to turn out. One of these projects involves Jack and Rollergirl riding in a limousine, searching for random men for her to have sex with. When one man recognizes Rollergirl from high school, he insults her and Jack, and they attack the man, leaving him injured on the sidewalk as the crew drives off. So, Big D, as you mentioned, we make this break into the 80s, and this movie has a voice. It has things to say. If you look at the plot line, a lot happens, but it's not like super complicated. Instead, they're giving us very clear messages, and that's where the power of the movie comes from. And in this case, it's an indictment of the 80s. Like the 80s became a more violent culture. There was an aggressiveness to people. There was a cheapness of the things that we embraced, and guns were just everywhere. And we did Trading Places last week, and I think Trading Places was trying to make a statement on this, and it's a straight up comedy, right? Or it's attempting to be. Boogie Nights is a drama and much more effective at making this message. It's the difference in the tone. It's the difference in the way the movie is done. It's not just titties and Corvettes. This is pointing a gun at the 80s and saying the 80s fuck shit up.
It did. And I think it's not just the fact of like the 80s itself, but what was allowed to happen in society in the 80s, like how porn itself changed in the 80s. Because porn is a reflection of society in general, right? Like the porn they watched in the 1920s is totally different than the porn we watch today. And I think that Paul Thomas Anderson was so smart to show how the porn also had to change from the 70s to the 80s, where it was more kind of good natured and just, you know, people fucking in the 70s. And then it became much more exploitative with Rollergirl, for example, in the 1980s. And I haven't said anything negative yet. And I do think, and this is not, I can't say that this is just my critique. This is a very common critique of this film that I happen to agree with, which is that speaking of Rollergirl, shout out to Heather Graham, who is just straight up gorgeous in this movie. She's an amazing actress. But I don't think that Paul Thomas Anderson does enough in this movie to show how women are just categorically more than men taken advantage of within the porn industry. And by focusing on this male character of Dirk Diggler, he's able to kind of overlook some of that and kind of avoid some of it. And the one place he does get it right, though, is here with Rollergirl, where she's in this limo. And when that guy uses her real name and the look on her face and the terror on her face of being called out by her name by this man and them seeing her for who she had to become, it was so sad and it was so brilliant. It was so cathartic to get to see them beat the shit out of him. But other than that one scene, I don't know if they dive enough into that.
Even though they may not have focused on Rollergirl and her exploitation, I think they do a wonderful job of using her to show her backstory, that the damaged homes that create all of these characters, her desperate need for a mother, to at the end where she's begging Amber, be my mom, say you're my mom. They focus and they show that all of the people who are in this business are in there for a reason. Something's happened to them in their real home. They didn't have a family, and they find it in this disjointed group of people that becomes their family.
Yeah, and Jack is clearly the stand-in dad for them, which is shown in this scene. And y'all, Burt Reynolds, like, who knew? I mean, I know lots of people knew, but like Burt Reynolds' big films, I will be very honest, I had never seen. And so this is really my only experience with Burt Reynolds. And y'all, he looks amazing. He acts amazing. And I think that he deserved all of the accolades with awards that he got and for this incredibly memorable performance. But I did not realize that he and Paul Thomas Anderson absolutely hated one another. They would get into screaming matches on sets. Multiple times they almost got into fist fights on sets. And it was so bad that Paul Thomas Anderson wanted him to be a part of Magnolia when all of this was over. And he flat out refused. His exact words were, I've done one Paul Thomas Anderson film and that's enough. And I think that's so sad because I think he's incredible in this.
Well, desperate for money, Dirk resorts to prostitution, but is assaulted and robbed by 3 men. Leading lady Amber Waves finds herself in a custody battle with her ex-husband. The court determines that she is an unfit mother due to her involvement in the porn industry, prior criminal record, and cocaine addiction. Buck Swope marries fellow porn star Jesse St. Vincent, who becomes pregnant. Buck is disqualified from a bank loan and cannot open his own stereo equipment store. That night, he finds himself in the middle of a holdup at a donut shop in which the clerk, the robber, and an armed customer are killed. Buck escapes with the money that the robber demanded.
So I'm going to call this night Magnolia Light. Because Magnolia, everything happens, everything is interlocked. We get this evening, and everything crashes down at once. Amber loses her kids in the custody battle. Rollergirl runs into that kid in the back of the limo. Jack is laughed at. He's told his movies suck. Dirk is beaten and they think that he's gay. You have poor Buck who gets caught with brains all over his head. Everyone's world in this one night comes crashing down. And with that music in the background, I was sitting on the couch alone, but I could feel the dread of where it was going. And even though I had seen it, I was worried that Buck might have been killed or his pregnant wife might have been killed. You can feel the dread on screen.
Yeah, this is really one tough night. It reminded me of like episodes of 24 when you're like, oh, Jack's having another bad day. And then you're like, wait, this is like 9 seasons of Jack having bad days. It's weird. But, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson, as you mentioned, did this in Magnolia, and it is blocked like a stage production. I think that's the part where you can give it a little bit of slack here because it's not trying to be real life, I don't think. I think it is trying to be theater. And in that case, you know, I'll forgive.
And this movie, I can say this confidently, is the best PSA anti-drug message I have ever seen. Show this section of the movie to kids, and they will really take a second, hard, long thought about taking some drugs.
So, Ash, you did the podcast No Need to Argue about addiction, and you're married to Tom, who is in recovery. And I've always been afraid to try coke and heroin because of movies. Like every movie that we see, whether it's Train Spotting, Boogie Nights, Requiem for a Dream, which terrified the shit out of me. Any of these movies, somebody's getting their life fucked up. Somebody's dying. Somebody's world is falling apart. And I get why Dirk and Amber and Rollergirl do coke because of the aforementioned kind of broken homes that they come from or the pressure, you know, as Big D pointed out. But I still think it's so strange that average Americans can watch movies, you know, like Boogie Nights, like Requiem for a Dream, and still say, yeah, coke sounds like a good idea.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up Requiem for a Dream because that's what Tom has always said is that like non-addicts watch that movie and they're like, oh, you know, they're clutching their pearls and going, oh God, these poor addicts. And he watched that movie and he like totally ignored the back half and was like, this looks fucking awesome. And then he went and did a bunch of heroin, you know, so like he was like, this looks great. They escaped, you know, and that's all he was looking for was a way to do that. And so for him, he watches movies like this and like his brain chemistry is just totally different and he gets the consequences, but that high that they experience, that's a lot more enticing than the consequences they have with this, you know, massive downfall.
You see, and I understand Tom's addiction. I was a recreational user, I'd say, of pretty much everything across the board, with the exception of injection or crack. I was willing to try everything. But watching this now, the scene with Amber and Rollergirl sitting on the bed, and they just start pounding lines, line after line after line. And the manicness, do you want to go for a walk? I go for a walk. No, I don't. I just want to sit here. I don't want to leave the room. And they start sweating. Or when Dirk has his meltdown where he finally quits, I found my heart racing.
Yep.
I haven't done drugs in a while, many, many years. But this almost brought me right back to it. And I said, how did I ever do that without fearing these panic attacks?
No, Big D, you're absolutely right. These scenes scared me more than any horror movie we've watched this year. I was watching it and I was getting very nervous for everybody involved. I wanted to get the fuck out of the room. I was like, I want to get away from these people. I'm not comfortable here.
Yes.
Well, Dirk, Reed, and their friend Todd Parker attempt to scam local drug dealer Rahad Jackson by selling him a half kilo of baking soda as cocaine. Dirk and Reed decide to leave before Rahad's bodyguard inspects it, but Todd attempts to steal additional drugs and money from Rahad. In the ensuing gunfight, Todd shoots Rahad's bodyguard, and Todd is killed by Rahad. Dirk and Reed barely escape, and Dirk reconciles with Jack. In 1984, Buck and Jesse give birth to their son. Amber shoots the TV commercial for Buck's store opening, and Reed performs a magic act at a strip club. Colonel James remains in prison, Maurice opens a nightclub, and Rollergirl takes a GED class. Dirk and Amber prepare to start filming again. So I had remembered most of this movie from the time that I watched it when I was in my 20s. I totally forgot about the Rahad Jackson incident, but I wanted to spend more time with Todd. Todd was kind of incredible. He just got more and more interesting as the years went on, and that mustache was fantastic. And this scene, if you guys don't remember it, they're trying to pull off this thing. That like security door opens up. They walk into the room and you're like, holy shit, what is going on here? It's awkward. It's scary. It's hilarious. And it just spoke to me. I felt like this scene was made for me. There's the kid Cosmo who's just lighting off firecrackers and it's just making everybody jump. And the only explanation is it's Cosmo. He's Chinese. And then they start playing like Night Ranger's Sister Christian. There's,
Yes.
Alfred Molina and the Speedo, that huge bodyguard, this giant shootout. It made me so happy.
My parent mode kicked in. I'm like, this Todd is bad news. You guys stay away from this Todd. He is going to be up to no good. I do not trust his plan. You guys stay away from him. When he comes in there, I'm like, why are you guys following this idiot around? And when that song comes on, Gene, again, like I said, the music is embedded into the film, and you can hear the drum solo coming up, and he's like, motorin', and you see that tension. I felt like Dirk as the sound drops out of the scene, and Reed is trying to talk to him, and you're not hearing anything. That was how I felt. I wanted to get out of that house at all costs.
I just loved how much they committed to the firecrackers.
Yeah.
Well, and this part of the movie, it brings the big reveal, right? Like we finally get to see Dirk Diggler. And I know that this may be an unpopular opinion, but I hate the fact that they let us see it at the end of this movie. I think it's such a great gag throughout that we don't get to see it. It's kind of like in a horror film, how like once you see the monster, it loses its power and it's just not as scary anymore. And so in this, like once you see it, it's not that it doesn't look big because, I mean, sure, it's a nice size penis, but like at the same time, I was like, oh, well, that's it. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like it was a big mistake. I wonder if the studio forced them into this because it just doesn't feel like a move that Paul Thomas Anderson would make.
Yeah, I agree. And what bothered me more is that they put a lot of thought into it. Like if you read up on this movie, they talk about like when they wanted to show it, that they didn't want to show it early on. They wanted to let it build up. Like I think Paul Thomas Anderson said like Jaws, how they made it. And I felt like it was totally unnecessary unless, again, you subscribe to my earlier theory that this movie is about how porn also exploits male talent. They said it's only fair that if we're seeing titties that we got to see a dick. But it was, I don't know, it didn't work for me.
I remember the dick being bigger. I got to be honest.
Me too.
I thought it was bigger. And I don't know if maybe because today with the internet and Pornhub, that the recruitment of larger male actors is easier. Because back in the day, you had John Holmes. I don't know how John Holmes would hold up against some of these guys. Because today, have you seen that guy sitting on the edge of the bed, Big Barry Wood?
No.
I guarantee once you see this guy, like people have photoshopped him into like clouds of a storm coming and they're like, oh, we know it's the end of the world now. And if you look closely, you can see this large African-American man sitting on the edge of his bed, dangling almost to the floor. Big Barry Wood, he's a character. He actually has a website where you can buy T-shirts, mugs, hats, all kinds of memorabilia. But I found myself really just going back to the basic question I think every listener is wondering about, Ashley. Who is bigger, Dirk Diggler or Tom Shafley? How do we compare the penises?
Well, he's flaccid here, right? Like, so probably Dirk Diggler. I mean, that sucker's going to grow, right?
Well, it could be a grower.
I remember being like 14, 15 years old watching this and being so scared that that was out there because I didn't know, like I think sometimes you watch, like, I know that like big dicks, I think the big dicks are big in porn for men more than they are for women, because I think a lot of women look at that and they go, what the fuck am I going to do with that? Or like, you know, that's not going to be comfortable at all. And so I don't know. I remember it really frightening me as a kid, but I do remember it being bigger though. I don't know if it's just time. I don't know if it's the TV I watched it on, but it seems smaller than normal.
Ash, I didn't think about it until you...
Smaller.
Oh, okay, thank God.
I said smaller.
Have to go see a therapist.
No, smaller.
Yeah, Ash, until you mentioned it, I got to think about this for a while, because I will admit that when I'm watching porn and the dude's dick is really small, it's very off-putting. And I wonder why.
Or
I shouldn't care.
Dick.
I should want it to be the smallest dick possible so it's not in the way.
No, the pencil dick especially, those get the worst likes on Pornhub. Like, nobody votes those up because everybody wants to see a big dick. And I think that that's the thing. Like, men are most of the porn watchers. I mean, women watch porn, obviously, but it's a very dominated male thing. And why are there big dicks then? Because I got to tell you, I'm not, scrolling through going, oh man, if only his dick were a bit bigger. Like, I'd stop and watch this one. Like, no, I don't ever say that. I think that it's a dude thing.
No,
you want to see what you want to have. What your dick looks like in your head.
No, that's not it. That's not it. You remember I told you how I judge an actor if he or she can get through an entire movie and I don't recognize it's Tom Cruise? The small dick pulls me out of the scene. So instead of seeing what's going on, when the small dick is there, I'm like, oh, that poor guy. Just thinking about like the other people on set who are looking at him, that she was wishing she had a different actor. It pulls me out of the moment.
No, see, I don't think you're thinking about that. I think you're thinking about yourself. And I think that that's what you're doing. When you watch it, and if it's like a small dick, you start to think about yourself like, man, is that what my dick looks like on screen? Am I not pleasing women? Like, I think that if the dick wasn't big, you would get so in your head about it that, you wouldn't be able to enjoy the film.
If that was the case, the big dick would scare me. It would make me feel worse. That's not what it is.
I'd like to interject a third theory here. And my theory is that the bigger the dick, the more adult it seems. So a very small dick reminds us of children, because the time that I'm disturbed the most is if it's a small dick blowjob. Small dick blowjob scene is the worst because the woman's hand looks very big. Her head looks gigantic next to that like tiny dick. So I think it's because I associate small dicks with children, and the bigger the dick, the more of an adult it seems to be to me.
That's just gross.
I mean, there's a bell curve. At some point, it gets to be just comically
just
weird.
Insanely gross. Yeah. I mean, I think that says more about you than it does anyone else, Gene, because but hey, it's fine. Let's move on from the dicks to the ending of this movie, right? And I love the fact that the characters in this movie, that they wind up like right where they were at the start of the film. Like normally in movies, you've got these big arcs. Look at Trading Places last week. Like there are these giant arcs that the characters take. In this movie, though, Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't do that. And he really doesn't do that in any of his films. And I think that's a lot more realistic about how people actually are in life. They don't make these massive changes. They make incremental, tiny changes. And we may learn from some of the things that we've done. But this movie isn't about Dirk Diggler, like, going to college, right? Like, and like the sequel. Paul Thomas Anderson actually has said very specifically the reason he never thought about writing a sequel to this, despite people asking, is he assumes all the characters except for Jack would be dead in a few years, that they would have succumbed to their addictions or that something would have happened to them on the streets. And I love that authenticity about this movie because at the end of the day, the movie's about finding family. And that family, what is the family we can all hope for? It's the people that accept us for exactly who we are. So Dirk doesn't have to change when he comes back. Jack loves him anyway. And I think that that's a really beautiful and kind of inspirational end to this film that got so dark. And I really enjoyed that about it this time.
Yeah, Ash, I agree. If Darren Aronofsky had made this movie, there'd be like, the ending would be like one of them died of AIDS, somebody OD'd, somebody got like brutally raped and killed. But we grew to care about these characters as a family, and that's what Anderson decided to focus on. So it wasn't like a happy ending, but it wasn't a disaster either. And I loved all of that about it. My only gripe, and this is minor, this is a near perfect movie, is that Boogie Nights, while I think it's better than Magnolia, it's not quite like There Will Be Blood. Like there is a gap there. And I think a big part of that is that final act, it feels more like an epilogue than, a true part of the movie. In a movie that's 2 hours and 30 minutes, I don't feel like the ending should have felt rushed at all. And it seemed like a fast forward at the end.
Totally agree.
And with that, we go to our wipe scores. Wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is a Dirk Diggler hog, just hanging out in all of its beauty. And 5 wipes is getting your face smashed by roller skates on the sidewalk after being a complete fucking asshole. Ash, we'll start with you. What's your score for Boogie Nights?
Yeah, I think that this movie really held up beautifully for me. I was a little nervous going into it, but I thought it was really fantastic. Paul Thomas Anderson, he still stands out to me as being one of the best directors of this time period. And more so than that, he's just a really incredible storyteller. And I also find the fact that this was his big first foray into big picture making incredibly fucking annoying, you guys, because I didn't do anything this cool my first time out. And I find people like that just insanely genius. This movie could have very easily been an exploitation type film like Showgirls was, like a lot of people remember it being, but it isn't. Thanks to his treatment and the acting that's in it, it's a solid story. It's absolutely solid acting. There are a couple mishaps here and there, but I do think that overall it's an incredibly solid film, and I'm giving it 0.5 wipes.
All right, that's half a wipe from Ash. For me, I agree. It was incredibly smart and talented movie making, especially for sort of a big picture debut. I started watching this movie at midnight after a very, very long day, and I was convinced I'd fall asleep. I was like, there is no way I'm getting through 2.5 hours at midnight, but I'll get as far as I can. I'll probably have to rewatch it in the morning, but that's okay. I want to get started now. Next thing I knew, it was 2:30 in the morning, and I was actually sad when it ended. Like the credits came up, and I was like, what? That's it? Like I wanted more. I normally want a movie cut tighter, under 2 hours mark. Here, I could have gone with an extra 15 minutes. So for me, that's 0.75 wipes.
Gene, for me, I think this is a half wipe movie. It's everything that I want in a film. It's beautiful. It captivates me. It gives me a group of characters that I care about. I can watch them grow. I think the music, for the first time, was a standout. The performances are great. You look at the awards that this film got. We are not the only ones who think this. And I think also that Paul Thomas Anderson, I'm going to watch more of his catalog because there's a talent. The way he tells a story, it's easy to follow. It's a pleasant experience. And all around, this movie was nearly perfect. A 0.5 wipe for me. And I will watch this one again.
All right, so that's half a wipe each from Ash and Big D and 3/4 of a wipe from me. That gives us an average for Boogie Nights of 0.583 wipes repeating.
So Gene, with the score of 0.583, that now puts this movie alone in the 19 spot. It is slightly better than Groundhog Day and Good Will Hunting. It is slightly worse than The Princess Bride and Forrest Gump. So we're talking anything above 25. We're in the 3/4 wipes range. These are all Dynamite films.
I think that's legitimate. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well done, Charlie from Ventura, for bringing this back into our lives and refreshing my memory about Alfred Molina's incredible performance. We have a few shout outs this week from listeners who decided to write in. If you'd like a shout out, go to our website, shatthemovies.com, and use the shout out box to put your name in there. We'll read it on the podcast. This week's shout outs go to Chris, Manu Hernandez, Meets and Cheats on YouTube, where every day is a cheat day. You're welcome. Andy E. from Stoke, UK, Danny Trejo's Big Guns, Titty McSchwarzenegger, Greg Wan, John Paul, Luke C., son of Ken C., Jet Setting Satchel, Miggy Fly from Austin, Texas, Eric ATX, Dre from London, Todd from Sydney, Paul Carter, Vanessa, and Shanny Mac 3TO. Thanks, guys, for listening and visiting shatthemovies.com. Back to you, Big D.
So, Gene, next week, the commission train rolls on, and this was commissioned by one of our listeners, Scott H., and he wants us to review the movie that tells the tale of lovely teen Julie Richmond, is steep in the excessive pink-clad culture in San Fernando Valley, complete with her narcissist boyfriend, Tommy. At a party, however, Julia falls for an edgy Hollywood punk named Randy, and the two begin an unlikely romance. Torn between fitting in with her superficial friends and embracing a more nonconformist lifestyle, Julie ultimately has to decide to stay with Tommy or to take a risk with Randy. Again, it was commissioned by Scott H., released in 1983, and I have never seen this movie, and other than reading this description right now, I had no idea what it was about.
I think you're going to like it, Big D. I think you're going to like it a lot. Well, thank you, Scott, for your commission. Thank you, Charlie, for your commission. And thanks to everyone who's commissioned and made this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. You can support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our Twitch stream. If you have Amazon Prime, you can use that to subscribe via Twitch Prime. Even if you don't watch us on Twitch, that's okay. It'll contribute to the podcast financially without costing you a cent. It comes straight out of Bezos' pocket. So do that for us. We'd really appreciate it. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, Game of Thrones, Watchmen, and coming up in January, it's American Gods Season 3. You can find all that information at shatontv.com. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review that helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, Ash Schlafly, and the King Bee, I'm Gene Lyons. Happy 2021, and join us next week for the following movie.
Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's.
Ow, gag me, how could you?
For sure. Dirty. Besides, it's totally gnarly birth control.
I can't stand it. Okay, so he's awesome.
Valley Girl.
She's out there somewhere.
This is the story of a boy from Hollywood who never dreamed the girl he'd want most was down here.
Hello.
Hello. Who invited you?
Oh, wow, you mean you have to be invited? Well, that explains it.
What?
Well, everyone is dressed weird. See, if I had been invited, I would have known this was a costume party.
Right.
It's the story of a girl from the valley who never dreamed she'd ever be seen with a boy from over here.
Like, I'm not getting out of this car.
All right, but when they attack the car, save the radio. So when can I see you again?
I'm here with you now.
I
know. This is the story of Randy and Julie, the way they come together, and the people who try to pull them apart.
Like, don't you think they have parties over there? Oh, where? At the zoo?
This geek that she's with could scar her for life.
God, life?
If you think she's confused, you should see her father.
I'm together now. Be right there.
Julie's cool. Randy's hot. She's from the valley. He's not. Valley Girl.
Oh, bitchin', is this in 3D? No, but your face is. I'll stop the world and I'd melt with you. You've seen the difference and it's getting better.
Julia loses her kids in the custody battle.
Who's Julia?
Amber.
What did I? Oh, it says Julia. Oh, because of her name, her real
Julianne.
name.
Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore. Yeah. So Fuck. So
Like, who the
Amber
fuck is
Julia, she was the off screen. She was the fluffer.
Yeah.
You don't remember her?
No.
Julia the Fluffer.
Julia the fluffer.